About God showing up when He needs to. He just keeps doing that. And if yesterday's Washington Post in the Metro section, usually on Saturday they have a little religion section. And this I wanted to share with you is a story about a fellow by the name of Andy Otto. He's a minister today, but part of his path he was on in his younger days led him to this, and I'd like to share it. It's been 13 years since I decided to take a semester off from college to go to Disney World. At 19 years old, shy and awkward and fairly sheltered, I joined Disney's college program. And believe it or not, in the 11 months that I worked at Disney World, I laid the foundations for my life in the ministry. Oh, by the way, the title of the article was "Working with Mickey Mouse Was the Ticket." It said, I've been reviewing a journal that I kept during my time working alongside Mickey and Minnie Mouse in 2003. Just a week into my experience, I wrote, I think I'm really changing as a person. I feel so comfortable to act myself and be silly because everyone else is. I was right. I was changing. Here are 6 fundamental values I learned at Disney that shaped me into the minister that I am today. 1, family. My parents have always taught me the importance of caring for family, but each day at Disney, I saw hundreds of families being intentionally about their togetherness. Couples held hands as they strolled down Main Street. Family reunion groups snapped photos with their relatives to preserve memories. The importance of family bonds was evident all around me. Walt Disney's dream was that there could be a wholesome place families could enjoy together. If I was ever having a tough day, I could look at the families and be reminded of the magic of Disney. Disney taught me that family is priority and that it should transcend financial hardship, disputes, and even distance. The second thing it taught him was hospitality. Disney taught us that we should always treat each guest as a cherished friend, and that even if the line was long, the most important person was the one in front of us. We gave that person our full attention. The value of courtesy was always put above efficiency. My interaction with guests at Disney was the initial spark for my future ministry. Ministry requires your full attention on the person before you. I took this lesson into my work as a hospital chaplain. Sometimes my patient list was so long that if I focused solely on checking visits off the list, then I wouldn't be able to spend quality time with any of them. Ministry requires hospitality. Each person we encounter has dignity and worth, so we ought to receive them lovingly and make a welcoming space for them. Another opportunity for ministry was volunteering for Give Kids the World, which has a resort near Disney World. The children staying there had terminal illnesses, and for many of them, a trip to Disney was their last wish. I volunteered some nights to hang out with the kids while the parents had a date night. It was my first experience being with children who were dying. They had such joy and innocence. I felt within me a yearning to always love the vulnerable among us, a fundamental calling of Christian life. Another thing he learned was empathy. During part of my time at Disney, I worked in guest relations. There I often had to exercise my listening skills. Another critical ministry skill. Guests would share with me their compliments and complaints, And as in ministry, my role was to share their joys and their sorrows. I'd either smile to affirm the great experience a guest was having, or I would nod and acknowledge that their experience was not so good. Families spend a great deal of time saving to make a trip to Disney World, so it's understandable they may be disappointed if their expectations are not met. My primary role was not just to make the experience right, but to listen empathetically. Empathy places ourselves in the shoes of the other. Empathy reminds the other that we share in their humanness. This is a skill that I have developed through the years that I apply every day in my ministry. Another thing he learned with his tour at Disney was joy. It may seem that Disney manufactures an artificial happiness, and although that may be partly true, Disney always includes in its fairy tales the realities of life, the human struggle between good and evil, the difficulty in making moral choices, even grief. Even when young princesses mourn their parents and contend with evil villains, the human yearning for joy underpins all Disney does. And it should also underpin ministry. As Christians, our hope is joy. We yearn for joy just as we long for God. We know that, like a Disney story, the sorrow and suffering is only temporary. Another thing he learned was diversity. An essential element of good ministry is being non-judgmental, being a non-judgmental presence for another person. We must meet each person where they are and as they are. Disney was a wonderful place to learn about the value of diversity. I had the chance to meet and work with people from many countries with different cultures and many different religions and life experiences. I could not be sheltered from the vivid diversity of the human family. I had to follow Christ's command to love my neighbor, no matter who they were. Another thing, and very greatly, was faith. Disney parks and movies have always been saturated with spiritual and moral themes. The parks, too, typically have not shied away from their Christian influence, thanks to Walt Disney's devout Christian background. He even had Disneyland dedicated by a minister. Each year, Walt Disney hosts the Night of Joy, a weekend of Christian bands playing throughout the park. The religious influence is most apparent at Christmas time, when Disney parks play traditional tunes and educate visitors about Christmas traditions from around the world. At Disney's annual candlelight processional, a celebrity narrator retells the story of Christ's birth, and a choir sings traditional Christmas songs accompanied by an orchestra. This tradition began at Disneyland in 1958, continues today in both Disneyland and Disney World. I had the choice to sing in the choir for the candlelight processional. I'll never forget standing on the risers, singing "O Holy Night," gazing at the lighted Christmas tree behind the audience, feeling so blessed that I believed what I was singing about. Truly, He taught us to love one another. His law is love, and His gospel is peace. All that existed and all the opportunities I've had, including my time at Disney, spring from this story of divine love. Disney became for me a sign of God, shaping me in these values that were so important to my later ministry and relationships. I don't think I would have been ready to hear the call of God for ministry if I hadn't been given the chances to embrace the values of Disney World. As each year passes, we become more the person God made us to be. If you're 20, you'll be more of you at 30. If you're 55, you'll grow more into yourself at 65. Our human formation never ends. I'm blessed that some of my formation happened at one of the happiest places on earth. We don't have to wait to go to Disneyland. We can express all of these things in our individual selves. We can show love within the family. We can show hospitality to strangers. We can have empathy with those in suffering. We can express joy, and we can share the joys of others instead of being envious of them. And we have to be diverse. Or I'd rather say non-judgmental. And of course, the last, the greatest of faith, is a prerequisite for all of the above. Thank you today, and we've got only 3 minutes, so Matt, we're not going to have time for. But if somebody does have a quick testimony, you got a minute to do so. If not, we will have our